The original iPhone, released on January 9, 2007, has been hailed as revolutionary, a breakthrough handheld computer, and the best phone that anybody has ever made. Successive iPhone models have generated significant fan enthusiasm too, which explains the frenzy we witness as many customers queue up in front of Apple stores on launch day. Not to forget, studies have even revealed that the iPhone has higher brand loyalty than any other smartphone. But have you asked yourself, what is life like inside the factories that make such a successful product? What cost do employees pay? Let's take a closer look inside the world's largest smartphone factory, the Apple Mega Factory at Foxconn, Zhengzhou. For years, Apple has relied on a manufacturing network of 150-plus companies in China to mass-produce the revolutionary smartphone, the iPhone. Of these companies, the largest by far is Foxconn Technology Group's Zhengzhou branch, spanning 5.6 square kilometers, about one-tenth the size of Manhattan. At full capacity, it's home to some 200,000 workers and manufactures about half of the globe's iPhones, meaning there's a high chance yours came from here. While we're on this, it's important to mention that this factory can produce a whopping 500,000 iPhones per day, translating to over 20,000 per hour or about 350 per minute, which might explain why locals now refer to Zhengzhou as iPhone City. Now, because Apple doesn't build up a large inventory of products but has iPhones made as consumers order them, a strategy known as just-in-time manufacturing, Foxconn Zhengzhou's busiest season begins around September or October when Apple unveils its latest iPhone models. Production then continues through the end-of-year holiday season until January or February. If you want to get a job at this mammoth factory, your chances of getting accepted increase significantly if you slot in your application just before the release of new Apple products. For example, Foxconn Zhengzhou hired some 20,000 workers in 2022 before releasing their latest products at the time. To give you an idea of just how impactful this mega factory is, we need to look at the profits. Granted, it isn't easy to gauge the total value the US government makes from the Zhengzhou operation. However, many experts agree that this company contributes heavily to the 90% of profits Apple earns in the smartphone industry, despite it accounting for only 12% of worldwide sales. What happens inside Foxconn Zhengzhou? Because iPhone components come from all over the world, Foxconn Zhengzhou only handles the final assembly, testing, and packaging, or FATP, stage of manufacturing the iPhone. This stage entails roughly 400 steps, with most laborers doing a single task repeatedly, be it polishing iPhone screens, soldering internal components, or fitting screws. You do the same thing every day, it never ends, Chen, an employee, said during an interview. After a while, you get annoyed at the thing you are doing. You don't even notice it at first. While repetitive tasks on their own aren't ideal, it's also important to appreciate the sheer scale of most of the tasks here. Speaking to The Guardian, a worker from the screen polishing end revealed that she handled a whopping 1,700 iPhones a day, or about 3 screens each minute for 12 hours a day. If you happen to work a chipboard fastener, a task that could take up to a minute per iPhone, you will need to complete about 600 to 700 of them a day. And if you're slotted to the motherboard area, the minimum daily quota for you and your team is 10,000 units a day. Even so, some Foxconn workers have good things to say about their jobs. While they contend that work at the factory is mundane, boring, and repetitive, they say it's not overwhelming. For a place that employs over 200,000 people, Foxconn might surprise you with its emptiness, more so just after lunch break. Employees are always inside working their designated roles, giving the outside the feel of a ghost town. However, this emptiness allows you to focus your attention on the dozens of buildings, a business park, trees, police, and security guards on every street corner of Foxconn Zhengzhou. You also won't miss the paved roads to the factory and power plants. If you happen to strike up a conversation with one of the workers over a meal at the Foxconn cafeteria or restaurants near the dorms and the factory gates, you might just learn about a typical day here. For most people, it goes something like this. Rise and shine at 6:30 a.m. Depart for the factory by 7 a.m. Enjoy breakfast before diving into work at 8 a.m. Savor a leisurely hour for lunch, while some opt for the campus canteen's affordable fare of noodles, vegetables, and skewers of meat and fish priced at about $1. Others venture outside for tastier offerings at stalls or restaurants, where dishes range from $1.30 to $3.15. The workday wraps up at 5 p.m., though many seize the opportunity for overtime, laboring until 8 or 10 p.m. Post-work activities vary from dining with friends to indulging in video games until 10 or 11 p.m., followed by bedtime. This schedule is basically the same, but flipped for those on the night shift. Now, going back to bedtime, workers sleep in the sprawling dormitory complexes in Zhengzhou. There are at least a dozen 10 or 12-story apartment buildings built at a cost of $1 billion. Each dormitory room accommodates 8 people with bunk beds. Rent is about $25 monthly, and internet costs an extra $3. Because everyone works a different shift, the dorms rarely feel that crowded, as you might expect from a company of its size. Life at Foxconn Zhengzhou is not all rosy. There are tons of tough jobs here, including one the laborers refer to as working the screws. It entails picking an iPhone's rear cover and a tiny cable that charges the battery, scanning their QR codes, peeling off adhesive tape backing, and joining the two parts by tightening 2 screws. After all that, you put the unfinished phone onto a conveyor belt that carries it to the next station. You need to complete this task once every minute, and during a normal 10-hour shift, you need to attach about 600 cables to 600 cases using 1,200 screws. That would be enough, but every day, 600 or more unassembled iPhones await you. When it comes to breaks, things do not get any better. For instance, you're not allowed a strictly timed hour-long lunch break, meaning you better work on your eating pace, lest you go back to work while hungry. Is that all? Sadly, no. One anonymous worker speaking during an interview shared insights into the less-than-ideal living conditions. He revealed that he spent his days inside a windowless workshop that smelled of chlorine, wearing an anti-static gown and face mask. If he needed to use the restroom at some point, he had to make up for lost time. Besides the tough living conditions, those in senior positions tend to mistreat their juniors. The anonymous worker also disclosed that behind the assembly line, supervisors referred to as xianzhang or line leaders closely monitored workers' productivity on computer screens and regularly reprimanded those who lagged. "I feel we have no rights and dignity inside the workshops," he said. "Some line leaders just can't live a day without scolding people." Unfortunately, many workers tend to stomach the ill treatment because the pay is decent enough, at least according to some workers. Amidst the surge in global demand for new iPhones, Foxconn entices workers with pay and bonuses far exceeding those offered in other blue-collar roles, ensuring seamless operation of its assembly lines at full capacity. Employees ranging from rural migrants to college students bear hefty workloads, forsake holidays, and adhere to stringent schedules, all in pursuit of qualifying for the coveted end-of-month bonuses. However, all this is short-lived. When iPhone orders decrease, Foxconn implements measures such as reducing overtime and discontinuing bonuses to downsize its workforce. According to Yige Dong, a sociology professor at the State University of New York at Buffalo, Foxconn offers short-term seasonal factory employment known as gig manufacturing. Under this model, manufacturers maintain a core group of skilled workers while the remainder of the workforce is brought in for brief periods. Dong, who conducted research on female employees at Foxconn Factory in 2017, explained Foxconn recruits hundreds and hundreds of people each day, and they couldn't care less if you leave. They keep the workforce as flexible and dynamic as they can. Most of the people working at the factory are between 18 and 25 years old. Some interns are as young as 16. About half of the workers are men, and the other half are women. Many of them are from Zhengzhou or nearby villages in Henan, which is one of China's poorest provinces with around 94 million people. Foxconn Zhengzhou has also been plagued with several controversies. In October 2022, Zhengzhou came to a standstill after thousands of workers stalled production due to Foxconn's prison-like anti-COVID policies that prevented workers from leaving the complex, failed to provide the salary packages that were promised to new hires, and even quarantined the workers without giving them food. Workers took to the streets in protest, only to be met by the brutal force of law enforcement. Videos circulated on Chinese social media showed police beating protesting workers as well as large crowds of workers fighting back against law enforcement. According to experts, the supply chain disruptions resulting from the protests cost Apple roughly $1 billion a week in lost iPhone sales. Besides the inhumane COVID-19 policies, Foxconn has also witnessed a suicide problem. According to China Labor Watch (CLW), on May 14, 2013, a 30-year-old male worker jumped off a building to his death. He was married with a 5-year-old son and had entered Foxconn at the end of April. Earlier that year, a 23-year-old female worker and a 24-year-old male worker had jumped to their deaths from buildings within the complex. In January 2018, another suicide was reported by a factory worker after 31-year-old Li Ming jumped to his death off a building. There have been talks of Apple expanding its manufacturing in India to offset its reliance on Chinese factories, reportedly due to growing tensions between Beijing and Washington. What are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments. Meanwhile, no matter what you think about Foxconn, it remains the largest iPhone factory worldwide, and its impact is phenomenal. It's China's largest exporter, contributing 80% of Zhengzhou's and 60% of Henan's total trade volumes, and the province's largest employer.